Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are, and welcome to NerdTube. And we are here talking about Dark of the Ring, Season 3, Episode 14. Final episode of this season. It is the Steroid Trial, or as some people know it as the Vince McMahon Steroid Trial. I'm here with my usual wrestling cohorts, the encyclopedia of wrestling these two guys are. First of all, let me introduce you to D Jose 101. How you doing, mate?
I'm doing great. I hate you guys at the moment. You guys know why. For those of you that keep up on the internet, lucky bastards, you get to see Cesaro versus Walter. I hate you. But it's great to be here otherwise.
And also we have Dr. Straightgood. How you doing, mate?
I'm doing very well, Sam. Glad to be here this week once again.
Okay, now, I was very much hyped for this episode, but like most things in this world, this episode never really lived up to the hype. I was expecting quite a lot from this episode, and in a way, it delivered in a different way. We got to see a very renowned lawyer, more so than ever, in Terry McDivitt.
Jerry McDivitt.
Jerry, I apologize. Jerry McDivitt, who is Vince McMahon's personal lawyer, somebody who has bailed Vince McMahon out on many occasions. Things that he's been associated with, but not necessarily contributed to, like the Chris Benoit situations, but things he has definitely contributed to, like Owen Hart's death. And this is also something he was associated with, and that was the steroid trial. McDivitt has been the man Vince turns to, and you can kind of see why. I mean, he's about as tall as Vince McMahon as well, which I think helps for the fact, Vince McMahon, likes his big guys, probably his lawyers as well. So this particular man, after watching this particular episode, you can understand how he operates, what he did, what he said to get Vince McMahon off. And instead of which I thought he'd be throwing Vince McMahon on the bus, he was basically defending McMahon and basically fighting his corner in this particular episode, which was an interesting way to look at things. We did get confessions and what's not from other people within the wrestling industry. Dave Meltzer is always a good person to listen to, as well as other people who were on the opposite side of the fence to Vince McMahon, like that journalist for the New York Times, I believe.
Yeah, Phil Mushnick.
He's not really a journalist. He's more of a columnist. He writes opinion for a living.
They had a total missed opportunity to have Jim Cornette show up on here just to rip Phil Mushnick a new fucking asshole because he hates fucking Phil Mushnick with a passion.
I've got a few things that could be said about Phil Mushnick and probably will later on.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
the choice of guests was interesting. I think there was maybe a couple.
There was a couple that they missed.
Some of which was unavoidable, but there were some who you may not associate with this, but I would have loved to have heard the perspective of regarding the WWF locker room at the time regarding the steroid trials. I mean, guys like Sean Waltman, for example, or Bret Hart. I mean, he was involved in '93.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to have maybe heard from maybe someone like Jake the Snake Roberts, who wasn't like roided up like everyone else, but seemed to be quite a popular guy.
Well, that's
he wasn't there at the time, though. I don't think, was he?
And he was on drugs. Don't get me wrong.
Zahorian part, I know he was.
He was around for Zahorian. Now, the thing is, Bret Hart would also be an interesting take on Zahorian because Bret Hart was a customer of him. He's written about it. It admitted it.
Mm.
So if they had delved a bit more into the background of the involvement of Dr. Zahorian and the World Wrestling Federation at the time, then, yeah, Bret Hart would have been a perfect guest. Jake Roberts would have been another one. You've got quite a few guys that they could have, called up and asked, do you want to talk about being a customer of Dr. Zahorian?
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, they never did.
And for me, I think I'm disappointed in the more in the aftermath. I know they ended it kind of on a joking note, but I would have liked to have heard more about how Vince would have gone on after that, 94, 95 being the worst period of the history of the business up until 2007, and the impact that the smaller guys had in the years following and shit like that. And even I would have liked to have heard them touch on their bullshit wellness policy in today's times, but they could always elaborate upon that in the future episode, possibly.
Yeah, I think the wellness policy, the modern wellness policy anyway, is probably a future episode of Dark Side. Particularly the fact that
there are
I
loopholes
think
in that bitch.
not just the loopholes. I think it's the fact that with after the death of Eddie Guerrero, when it was reinstated, because the wellness policy did exist at one point up until I think about 1996 when it was eliminated for cost cutting reasons. After Eddie Guerrero's passing, when they reintroduced it, and it turned out that a lot of people just were getting completely messed by the wellness policy, or the wellness policy was basically a joke. Yep. That's why you had guys like Kennedy showing up during the Benoit murder talking about Signature Pharmacy. Well, he was talking about the fact, I passed the wellness test, I'm clean, and yet his name shows up in Signature Pharmacy.
Yep. And then there was also what I like to call the Randy Orton rule, where I think if you do a certain amount of time or whatever, you can work a strike off or whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
That could be something they could definitely touch upon, but let's get into this episode.
Yeah.
Okay, I did take some notes down on my second watch through because it was kind of interesting. So Dr. George Zahorian, please explain this guy to me, fellas. Who knows him better?
I don't really know him, but I know he was like, hi, Birdie. I know he was like a fan of the wrestlers, and I think he was the Pennsylvanian doctor.
Yes.
Like whenever they went to Pennsylvania, like he was their ringside doctor, and he was a fan, and they brought him on for the angles and things like that. Like, oh, this guy suffered, a blow to the head, or this guy suffered an injury. He'll be out for the rest of the night, shit like that. Like that was what his role was. And he was the guy that, the boys would line up from to buy their candy, so to speak, all the big shit, Percocets and all the painkillers and, all the good shit to get you high. And that was his role in all this shit.
I mean, I would love to have seen Zahorian's role in the WWF explored a bit more, because there has been a lot more written about him. And the fact that, and also the stuff that Zahorian has come out with in trying to defend himself, and the fact that he was distributing steroids. One of the things he claimed, for example, when he was busted, was that he was doing this to benefit the wrestlers, because he had an unnamed wrestler supposedly come up to him with a bottle, and it said on it, for veterinarian use only. And he gave the bottle to Dr. Zahorian, who was nicknamed in the locker room Dr. Feelgood. They gave him this bottle, and he said, "Can you get me more of this?" Dr. He looks at it. He said, he sees it says for veterinarian use only, and he then hands him a prescription slip, and he says, "Right, you need to sign this prescription slip." And he gets an X from the wrestler, and he asks this wrestler, "Can you write?" He says, "No." "Can you read?" "No." "Well, this bottle says on it it's for veterinarian use only." And he broke down, and he was explaining to him, how dangerous this was, and that's why he started giving him anabolic steroids that were permissible for humans. Now, again, this was Zahorian's claim, and part of this was brought up in the. I know part of it was brought up in the reason that Hogan didn't have to testify at the trial. But Zahorian was claiming that his distribution of anabolic steroids was entirely altruistic. It was, he came to value the professional wrestlers as friends. And he cared deeply about them. This is why he was doing it.
Yeah.
On the flip side, Bret Hart tells an absolutely different story. I mean, he's written about it. I think it was in his book, actually, that what would happen is the boys would all line up to see Dr. Zahorian. He was one of them. He would line up and get the doctor to, give him the tests that he had to do, which was, blood pressure. And once he was finished with that, he would just hand Dr. Zahorian a couple $100. He would get vials of testosterone. He would get painkillers. He would get halcyons to help him sleep. He would also get another drug for working with the steroids to stop his testicles from shrinking.
Everything except for booger sugar and white girl sounds like this guy.
And he's Bret also was quite open about the fact that Rick McGraw was getting almost like enough to fill a shopping trolley's worth, of pills from Dr. Feelgood at any one particular point. And
Damn.
Rick McGraw wound up dead at the age of 30 from a heart attack.
Yeah, because I was going to say, didn't he die like from an overdose or some such shit, or like brought on by, steroids and shit?
It was a heart attack. I believe it was attributed to prescription medicine.
Okay, yeah.
But he was getting absolute, loads of this stuff from Dr. Zahorian.
Ah.
And this was 1985.
Zahorian, but he was a real doctor who was
he was a urologist.
But he was also gimmicking in the WWE as well.
Yeah.
He was like playing a part as well.
Yeah. Whenever they did TV tapings in Pennsylvania, they always had him on as the ringside doctor, because WWE used to do ringside doctors back then to make it seem more legitimate back then.
Well, not just that. The Pennsylvania State Athletic Commission did mandate,
and they made that.
You did have to have a physician at ringside.
Mm-hmm.
So Zahorian did work with the WWF. He was never on the books for them. And that's probably one of the few reasons that Vince McMahon didn't go to jail.
Yeah.
And I think the WWF kept him on. Well, they only stopped bringing him in, I should say, around about, I think, 91, when he was going to be indicted for the steroid charges.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he was the person who provided the wrestlers with the steroids, allegedly or definitely.
No, it's not alleged.
He did it.
I mean, he was busted for 5 wrestlers in particular. He was busted for.
How long did he get?
I think he got, was it 5 years?
Shit.
And he had wrestlers testify against him as well.
Yeah, because the 5 that were busted, 4 of them testified in exchange for immunity from prosecution.
Which is what
the 5 wrestlers in particular were Roddy Piper, Rick Martel, Brian Blair, and I believe the other one was David Schultz. The 5th that didn't testify was Hogan. And that was explained by Jerry McDevitt, how he got him out of that.
No, but because obviously him working for Vince, and it's to do with steroids and stuff, this obviously goes all the way back to the top, which is why Vince was ended up in trial himself. So we have a moment on the we have one of the reasons why he actually never testified is Jerry McDevitt. He did his magic as a lawyer and basically said there was some doctor-patient confidentiality between Hulk Hogan and Zahorian, and for that reason alone, he didn't have to testify, which is unusual, but nevertheless, it somehow panned out.
Yeah, the actual story behind this was that Zahorian had been treating Hogan for steroid addiction. This was treatment so that because Hogan was concerned about shrinkage of his genitals, and also the problem of potentially not being able to have children. So this he apparently had discussed this with Dr. Zahorian, and that's how Jerry McDevitt argued that having Hogan testify would be a violation of doctor-patient confidentiality. I mean, it was a stroke of genius on McDevitt's part.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Hogan then went on to the Arsenio Hall show.
And this is the master of bullshit at work, y'all. Here we go.
Yeah. This is
you can add this to the list of Hoganisms that we did.
Yeah, well, this was some very much the early stages of Hulk Hogan's bullshittery. Mm-hmm. He basically explained that he took steroids for rehabilitation use on muscle injuries, and he had to do that on 3 different occasions. So he was explaining
3
why he took. Yeah, he took. Obviously, later on in the episode when he testifies against McMahon, and he said that we just share steroids back and forth with each other, but he never injected me, he never sold it to me, he never pushed it on me. But this was totally different to what was said earlier, which is that he only used steroids for rehabilitation.
Mm-hmm.
And this was Hogan maybe trying to set the record straight and maybe put a lid on things, but unfortunately.
He was lying.
He was lying.
He was blatantly lying.
Yep. Everybody knew he was full of shit, too. And you could even see it around that time, 91, 92, compared to like 84, 85. Hogan he got slimmed and trimmed as fuck in the early 90s. He did not look as beefy as he did back then.
Yeah,
so he was definitely weaning off the roids.
in particular, 92, you look at his matches with Yokozuna or his WrestleMania 9 match. And Hogan looked nothing like he did just a couple of years prior.
He looked more athletic.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. Now, because of all of this information coming out, there's a guy called John Arezzi, who's some wrestling historian. He mentioned that some heavies came to his house and they were trying to they were looking for him, but only found his mum, and then basically told his mum that his son should be careful. It's a dangerous neighborhood out there or some shit like that. Now, this is what John said that happened. Jerry, I keep calling him Terry. Jerry McDevitt says that this is bullshit. What do you guys think?
I don't know if that's entirely true on that or not. I mean,
we can't say this is really true one way or another.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not improbable that Vince McMahon might have sent some people around to intimidate John Arezzi without the knowledge of Jerry McDevitt. I mean, who knows? You never know what goes on in serious criminal cases like this. But again, I don't really know who to believe on this one.
Yeah, I don't buy it because I think if Vince wanted to be intimidating enough himself, he would do it himself. He's been known to do that type of shit in the past with some of his boys where it'll be like, yo, like, you know, we're going to have it out. We're going to fight about it. And then we're going to, you know, try to come to an agreement or part ways. He's been known to do that with guys like Stone Cold and many others back in the day. The shouting matches that he and Shawn Michaels used to have back in the day. Vince is known to be an intimidating figure himself. So I don't think Vince would send people after guys. At least not like that.
Fair enough. I mean, and John Arezzi doesn't even know himself because his mum answered the door. So he has to get this information from what his mum said, you know. But nevertheless, now there was an interesting moment when Vince McMahon was on the Phil Donahue show. My God, Phil Donahue looks like Leslie Nielsen. It's unbelievable. But nevertheless, he was on the Phil Donahue show, and there was one of the things alleged or said by Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon denied saying that, which was that he was devastated when he found out Hulk Hogan was on the Arsenio Hall show. And McMahon denied saying that, but then Dave Meltzer just threw him under the fucking bus. And said you did say that. You know,
that's what you told me.
Yeah, and
because Arezzi had brought it up.
And Dave Meltzer's working for him at the time.
Dave Meltzer wasn't working for the WWF at the time.
Sorry.
He was still writing the Wrestling Observer newsletter.
Yeah,
everybody was talking to the Observer at that point.
This is when the Observer was gospel back then. Like, it was basically the Bible. The boys, they would line up to see like TV ratings. They would line up to see their rankings. They would line up to see their star match ratings. That's how over Meltzer was back then. Nowadays, I call Dave Meltzer full of shit. But yeah, back then, Meltzer's word was law to the boys, at least, and to those that followed his shit.
I mean, he was one of the few credible wrestling journalists at the time, and that it's not saying a whole hell of a lot because you had Bill Apter, who liked to make some shit up. Let's put it that way. You had Wade Keller at Pro Wrestling Torch. Now he's got a history of sometimes making some shit up. And John Arezzi, I believe it was a local New York radio show he had.
Yep. And let's not forget, Meltzer did say Mabel was going to be the third man in the NWO.
Oh, yeah.
And there were people that believed that bullshit, too.
Speaking of the NWO, something I'm quite surprised they didn't bring up is the fact that at the time of the steroid trials, WCW was even blatantly talking about it. Mean Gene Okerlund had on his hotline the fact that he thought that the federal government were idiots. And he also said that he would love to be a character witness for Vince McMahon. I know at the time Dave Meltzer had reported in The Observer about this. He said that WCW was on shaky grounds to talk about this, which isn't technically true because they were going after Vince McMahon for distribution. Yes, WCW had an issue with guys taking drugs, but it wasn't being allegedly distributed within the company.
Yeah.
As it was that was what the government was alleging with Vince McMahon and the WWF.
And not to mention that WCW was about a year away from starting to beat their ass when Nitro came out. So WCW had just started coming up, basically, because they just signed Hulk Hogan around that time, or I think about, let's see, if the steroid trial was 93, this is when Hogan left. He jobbed to Yokozuna, and then I think he finished out his contract.
The trial was 94.
Okay, so Hogan had just signed with WCW then by that point.
Yeah.
So Phil, is it Mushnick?
Phil Mushnick.
Phil Mushnick, journalist, and he was basically called an FBI informant, and he basically said, and I'm not sure how I had to take this, but he said that the FBI, they read my articles and so they investigated. I mean, maybe you can call me an FBI informant. It's like, what the hell? How do you take that?
He's so full of shit.
Okay, well, that's the thing. The Department of Justice did read his article. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and they contacted Mushnick the very next day after his article was published.
Yep.
Well,
so that could be what led to the formal investigation into the WWF.
Well, in a sense of irony, McMahon hired ex-FBI guys himself to find dirty on this particular journalist, and he actually knew that he was having people finding dirt on him, and he said to these guys, "Listen, I used to smoke a lot of fucking weed back in the day.
Yeah,
Try and bring me down for that." He was happy to give him that as one in the house to take him down, but luckily, or for him that is concerned, that didn't take him down. But it goes to show, all right, fine. It was hard to tell if John Arezzi had some heavies coming to his house, but now you got this journalist saying that you got Vince McMahon trying to find dirt on him to discredit him as a journalist. Phil
Mushnick discredits himself as a journalist every time he writes one of his opinion columns.
All you have to do, and if you want proof of that, all you have to do is go YouTube Jim Cornette shoots of 1997, and he pretty much takes about 10 minutes to beat the piss out of Phil Mushnick.
Well, not even 10 minutes. He did it in about 2.
Yeah.
But Mushnick has had a vendetta against pro wrestling for years and years and years, and I'm not even going so much as like the steroid trial. He as Cornette pointed out in his shoot promo, that Mushnick said that after Ted Turner donated $1 billion to charity, he'd be better served closing WCW. He's also, as recently as, I want to say 2018, he's been writing articles bashing WWE, but he uses outdated references to things like the Attitude Era. He acts like this is still what happens in the WWE's programming.
No, they've toned that shit down entirely.
Yeah, I mean, he still talks about chair shots to the head, which is not happening.
Nope.
The wrestling industry, for better or worse, I mean, it has cleaned up in a lot of respects.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to be seeing guys from the mid 2000s onwards dying from steroid-related heart attacks nowadays because they are trying to cut out steroids from the sport.
Yep. And as I saw a comment on YouTube, which was brilliant. He said that he was like, today's kids are video game nerds and all that. And it's like, I'd rather be a video game nerd than, being a strung out guy on drugs and cocaine any day of the week. And in that respect, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I agree.
They're not boozers like they...
Not like they used to be. It's not like the Ric Flair days.
Exactly, for sure. So, we get to Vince McMahon's trial now, and he goes to trial for obviously allegedly passing steroids out to his athletes, to his performers, and we see the famous neck brace. Now, how many of you guys think that was legit, and how many of you guys think that was a work?
I don't know. I
have heard a few guys talk about how it was legit. A few guys that were close to Vince McMahon have said it was legitimate. He got the neck surgery, one, because he was going to miss TV during that period. In fact,
he missed King of the Ring 94.
He missed the one pay-per-view that year, which was King of the Ring 94.
How much does this guy weigh? That's all I need to know.
And also, if you think about it as well, it was kind of smart for Vince if he was going to go and get the surgery. Best get it now. If he's potentially going to jail.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough.
I mean, it did look comical. The neck brace did look.
It
comical.
looked funny as hell. Yeah,
he was trying to garner sympathy in court, but from what I have heard from guys who were close to him, over the years, it was legitimate.
All this time when I was younger, when I saw that, I just thought he got it as like maybe somebody DDT'd him and it fucked up, or and something along those lines. But during the testimony, many wrestlers said that they were taking. I mean, this is the funny thing now, because like Vince McMahon is set up, in my opinion, for a lot of things here, but it never turned out that way. And with the with a fantastic lawyer alongside him, he just never got the blame that might have come to other people who, if they were running a similar business. Wrestlers testified that they took steroids, and they said they were taking steroids before they even joined the WWE, which makes sense that many of them would.
It was basically It was basically like a worse kept open secret, because everybody knew. You could see it in them. Look at Macho Man. Macho Man was another one. He looked jacked as fuck.
He looked more roided up when he was in WCW.
Yeah,
it's not even just professional wrestling. I mean, the bodybuilding.
Yep,
those guys were taking steroids. You can look at certain action movie stars. Schwarzenegger, you can argue that, he was doing the bodybuilding thing first before, he ever got in a movie set.
Mm-hmm.
But Stallone, I mean, that guy was doing steroids. He wasn't just drinking raw eggs on the set of Rocky.
Yep. American football players here did it back then all the time, too.
Lyle Alzado, perfect example. He's the guy who was one of the meanest bastards in the NFL, and then he's saying that steroids gave him brain cancer.
Yep.
You look at Stallone's physique in the first Rocky movie, and then you look at his physique after that, Rambo films, the latter Rocky movies, he was absolutely fucking jacked.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, jacked beyond fucking belief. He was in good shape for the first Rocky movie, but after that, the guy had veins, man. Veins all over his body. So this is something which really interested me, because I never really correlated these two. But with this particular period, Hulk Hogan was on his way out, and smaller athletic guys allegedly were coming in, and that was something to do apparently with this whole drug scandal, because by guys who weren't fucking jacked up, it would maybe put a spot on him regarding him, sending drugs to his athletes. But I have to say, Shawn Michaels, when he first became the HBK, he looked fucking humongous, man. He was very big physically, almost barrel chested. He was a big guy still. So and Shawn Michaels always said that he did lots of drugs. He did a lot of recreational drugs. I'm not sure if he did performance enhancing.
Oh no, Shawn was pilled out of his mind throughout the 90s.
Yeah.
The only time I've ever heard Shawn Michaels and steroids mentioned is the story regarding Warlord, where he was injecting a syringe into Warlord's ass and he couldn't get the plunger to go down. And he just looked at him and said, "Dude, I think you're full."
Listening to Warlord as like a regular dude, because I've heard him to cut the odd promo here and there back in the day, but he would always have to give like an aggressive tone in his voice.
Yep.
But just hearing him talking regularly was fascinating, and he looked so different as well. I mean, like, he was hardly recognizable.
Mm-hmm.
He's still he obviously he's not as big as he was back then.
Nah.
He still looked like a big guy, regardless. But yeah, Warlord, he gave confessions. He gave testimony as well. He basically said that they were trying to throw Vince McMahon under the bus. They were trying to get him for anything. Vince McMahon never once gave out the drugs or anything like that, which is a common thing.
Speaking of throwing under the bus, we have to cut to nails, because that was probably the highlight of the whole fucking episode.
I kind of got lost. Let's get to nails actually, because I kind of got a bit confused about all this. Maybe one of you guys could maybe explain it to me in layman terms.
It's that thing of like, you know, the also meme, like okay, like I'll put in context like Nintendo's recent shit. Nintendo, we hate emulation. Also, Nintendo, let's go ahead and raise our price by $30 and let people not buy our games and have poor emulation. In Nails' case, Nails, I don't have Nails. I don't have animosity toward Vince. Also, Nails. I hate Vince McMahon.
Yeah, that bit made me laugh. That bit made me laugh a lot. Yeah, by the way,
Yep.
I laughed a lot at that. But when he said, you know, do you have any animosity towards McMahon? And he said,
no, but I hate
no.
him.
And then somebody said, Nell doesn't understand what an animosity means. So he said, yeah, okay, fine. Do you hate McMahon? I go, yes, I do. That made me laugh a lot. Okay, I got that. I got that bit. Yeah, I'm just saying afterwards, like he was supposed to give a testimony saying that Vince wanted him jacked up, which is why he was always wearing the orange overalls to cover his physique because he wasn't jacked.
Yeah,
but Vince wanted him jacked, and then nothing came from that.
The gimmick was he was supposed to be a former convict.
Yeah, I remember.
He was brought in. He was brought in for a feud with Big Boss Man.
Yeah, but then he turned out to be a convict.
Yeah,
which is irony, you know. But I don't get it. Like he was the person who's supposed to testify against Vince McMahon. He hates Vince McMahon, and all of a sudden nothing comes from that. I don't get it.
Well, no, because he was considered a hostile witness. I mean, he had previously, I think, when he got fired from the WWF, he sued and he claimed that Vince McMahon sexually assaulted him.
What the fuck?
So Nails was considered a hostile witness and therefore unreliable to the prosecution.
Oh, my God.
The fact that, again, the whole thing was, do you have any animosity towards Mr. McMahon?
No, but yes.
Do you hate Mr. McMahon? Yes. But the problem is, I mean, Nails was fired, I think it was 92.
Yeah, he was already gone. He was like, because this was a couple years after the fact.
Yeah, it was 92. Nails was fired.
Yep.
And again, his whole gimmick was, you know, he was supposed to be a prisoner, so they wanted him in the prison uniform.
Yep.
So he was not going to be showing off his body. So for Vince McMahon supposedly to be telling Nails, I want you on the gas, it's not credible.
No.
Rick Rude, you could make the argument that he maybe did say to Rick, you know, get on the roids, juice up, you know, get yourself bigger. But you couldn't argue that with Nails.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
speaking of Rude, actually, Rude was one of the wrestlers that testified in the trial.
They didn't even touch on that.
They didn't touch on that. They didn't touch on Pat Patterson's testimony. Apparently, those guys were rather dodgy when they gave their testimony. I mean, Rude, I think a lot of it had to do with he had the philosophy, don't crap where you eat. So, I mean, Vince McMahon has paid him very, very handsomely over the years. He's not going to want to fuck that up.
Yep.
Okay, well,
same for a lot of the wrestlers.
Now, we have this other lawyer who was on McMahon's side. Her name was Laura Bravetti. Now, her husband apparently was a journalist. Is that correct? Or pretended to be? I'm not sure.
I think he was.
And he was getting information from a WWE insider who, her name, I forgot, who was on trial as well. What was all that about?
His secretary. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you guys maybe shed some more light on that, Shredder?
This was... right. The Laura Bravetti's husband, supposedly he posed as a member of Inside Edition. He was asking Phil Mushnick, do you have any more information that you've not published that we could use for a program on this? He apparently had called a few other people involved in the wrestling journalism industry. And there were accusations a couple of years later of witness tampering. The idea that I think it was that he had coached Vince's secretary into what answers to give.
Mm-hmm.
Again, there were a number of accusations made, but nothing that was ever credible enough to stick.
Okay, I get you. But just watching Vince McMahon talk about this later on television was just a bit weird. But he did bring it up. God, like I said, when it
Because
comes
he
to
was responding
legalese,
to Phil Mushnick. He brought it up on television because he was responding to a column specifically from Phil Mushnick.
Yep.
Okay.
And Vince McMahon basically cut a Vince McMahon promo.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was merging the genres big time here.
Yep.
You know, making sports entertainment out of a fucking court trial.
Mm-hmm. That's basically what it came down to in the end.
Oh, yeah.
It was basically like Vince McMahon was the babyface. And like,
yeah. I heard like he was in fucking having in the restaurant and everyone's cheering him.
Yeah, when he got indicted.
Supposedly, yeah.
Go get him. Like fucking hell. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Let's get these motherfuckers, god damn it.
and like McDevitt, he was chomping at the bit, like he needed to go in his in his wrestling ring, which is the courtroom.
Yep.
And and show him like why he's the fucking face of the company.
This is like the time when Punk got fired and he lawyered up and he was like, I'm gonna go get these motherfuckers, and he got everything he wanted.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's basically what Vince did. Vince is like, I'm about to take the fucking United States federal government down. And before we wrap this up, I'm going to give a special award to a certain Stephanie McMahon before we wrap this shit up. You guys will know why when we get to it.
I'm going to give it a tragedy.
Yep. I'm going to give a special award to Stephanie McMahon before we wrap this up.
That's something I'm quite shocked they didn't bring up here.
The prosecution now were hedging their bets on Hulk Hogan's testimony.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but Hulk Hogan comes in and he says, that him and McMahon would work out together. He would, if he had some steroids, they would share it. If he doesn't, and McMahon would have some steroids, they would share it. But McMahon never forced him to take any. McMahon never sold him any, never injected him and stuff like that. And that,
do you buy it though? That's the question.
I don't know. I mean, but you got Hulk Hogan is a notorious liar.
Mm-hmm.
But you got at that particular time, you just got to take his word for it.
Yep.
Especially in a situation where like there was maybe a little bit of bad blood between the two of them. With him now joining WCW, if Hulk Hogan wanted to really fuck over Vince, he had the opportunity to do so right there.
He would have buried him, right then and there, and said, Vince sold me all this shit. That would have been the end of Vince. I mean, here's what I think would have happened. I think if Jerry Jarrett would have took over, WWF would have got their ass beat by WCW, but due to WCW's internal problems, I think they probably would have died out anyway because it would have been too much, this doesn't work for me, brother, blah, 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 blah. And that might have led to the end of WCW down the road.
Well, if WWE went bye because Vince McMahon ended up in jail, then maybe WCW would still be flourishing today.
Well, that's the thing. Everybody forgets that the charges weren't just against Vince McMahon. There were charges against Titan Sports, the parent company of the WWF.
Yeah,
I mean, they were facing fines that could have potentially bankrupted the company.
Yeah, this could have killed the WWF. This was probably, other than Ted Turner beating their ass, this was the closest that they probably have ever been to going out of business. 94 through about 98 was their worst time financially. They weren't making as much money. It wasn't until Mike Tyson came in is when they started really generating revenue.
Well, this like I said, this was the trump card by the prosecution, and it fell flat on their faces. They gave their closing speech, which was just basically saying how horrible Vince McMahon is. But that doesn't really mean shit. You could be a horrible person, but that's not going to work in court when it comes to being convicted for something.
That's not entirely true, though. They did cast aspersions over the fact that, and something that Darkseid didn't bring up, was that Dr. Zahorian, he was caught, when the FBI raided him, he was caught shredding documents.
Oh!
He at the time was shredding as much as he could when the FBI busted in.
And they only gave him, you said 5, right?
I think it was something like 5 years. I could be wrong.
Sound kind of like Michael Jackson's doctor when he died. Michael Jackson's doctor killed him, and then all that happened to him was he got about, like, I think a 5-10 year sentence, and he lost his license. And I think the Zahorian, the same thing kind of happened to him.
But Zahorian, So Zahorian allegedly, the prosecution alleged that Zahorian was effectively a drug dealer. He wasn't a doctor; he was a drug dealer.
Oh, okay.
One of the things they stated regarding this was an alleged phone call he had with Pat Patterson. Patterson apparently phoned his office and said, you need to call me back from a payphone.
Mm-hmm. That's a dark side. That's a dark side in and of itself. Pat Patterson, the stories they could get into about him.
Absolutely, but Patterson allegedly said, "You need to call me back from a payphone." So Zahorian went and called him from a payphone, and that's when Patterson informed him, "Look, there's a federal investigation. We can't use you anymore. You need to start getting rid of as much evidence as you can of your involvement with the wrestlers." That was what the prosecution alleged in this trial, which I'm surprised Darkseid didn't really bring up, but this was part of the argument against the WWF, which was that Zahorian was basically a drug dealer.
Yep.
But again, the prosecution didn't do themselves any favors over the fact that Jerry McDevitt was able to point out that, well, here's Zahorian, who has been moved to solitary confinement over and over again, effectively almost to try and get a testimony out of him.
Yep.
Well, but just seeing the confidence of McDevitt, here's a guy who thrives on the battle, and you can see why Vince McMahon would have him as a lawyer for sure.
Yeah, I mean, he's
full of confidence. This guy,
Rick Santorum, at one point was a WWF lawyer.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm absolutely serious.
You learn something new every day.
Yeah, but he's a fucking idiot.
Politically, maybe, but as far as the legal side of it was concerned, he was very, very good at his job. I think he was representing Jim Neidhart at one point, and that's what impressed Vince McMahon.
Interesting. Well, nevertheless, seeing Terry McDevitt, explain himself and talk about, what he did, what he can say, what he can't say. It was just fascinating him because he was on this show to basically back up his shtick, back up the WWE, stand by Vince's side. He was Vince's mouthpiece in this episode, and it was really fascinating to see that. Well,
I mean, it's strange. This is not a story. This is a story where Vince McMahon actually was the babyface.
Oh yeah, he was. And then Hogan, being king shit, Vince McMahon didn't go to jail because of me, brother.
I think a lot of people have said that Hogan's testimony did help keep Vince McMahon out of jail.
Yep.
I know Vince was angry about it, probably because he felt, well, if Hogan is telling the courtroom that I gave him steroids, then potentially he's implementing me as a dealer.
Yep.
Yeah, but it's all about how you frame it. Like, he's supposed to, but it's all the framing of it. Was he a dealer, or did they just?
Or were they just sharing drugs? Yeah,
yep.
Yeah. And so, in that sense, Vince McMahon wasn't implemented for being a dealer, which was absolutely fascinating, and being then not guilty on both accounts for himself personally and as well as the WWE. He celebrated, and then you could probably see the Mr. McMahon character start to develop here.
Oh yeah.
Because this is before Stone Cold. Like, you could see like he was like, this is where you feel like somebody in his position, he's untouchable.
And you want to know the funny, and this is sort of related, but Halloween is coming up, and Vince McMahon actually dressed as a prisoner on Monday Night Raw in 1994. Like, after all this shit happened.
Nice.
And I was just like, that's a shot that they totally missed out on.
I mean,
the aftermath. They missed out on so much.
Yeah, the case could have gone the other way entirely if, a few things had been done differently. For example, if they had prosecuted in Connecticut, where he was actually allegedly receiving and distributing the steroids, whereas instead they tried him in New York. The fact that they couldn't get the dates to match as well, for where Vince's secretary and a limo driver were supposedly taking these drugs out to the wrestlers in question. They were taking them to the Meadowlands. They were taking them to the Madison Square Garden. And all they had to do was pull up the dates the WWF were there and say, well, how could Hogan have received these steroids from Vince McMahon on this date at Madison Square Garden when WWF was in Connecticut or WWF was in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, so much bullshit. And then you go to the aftermath, basically. 94, 95, worst years of the history of the business. Houses were down. They weren't making much money. WCW came up, started beating their ass.
They were going through their
about
transition
2 years.
From being a kiddie show to the upcoming Attitude Era, which is a year or two later.
I mean, when was it WWF started testing for steroids? Was it 91?
Yeah, 91 is when they started that shit. And then I think they, like you said, they phased it out in 95, 96.
Yeah, it was about 96 they phased it out. I know previously they had a drug testing policy, but that was for cocaine mostly.
Yep. And then you could even see it in the aftermath, too. Like, you look at certain guys like Rey Mysterio, when he came to the WWF, there were times I'm like, oh, yeah, Rey's on something. Because Rey looked like he was jacked at times, especially before Eddie's passing. And even Eddie looked like Eddie looked like he beefed up, too.
Oh, yeah, Eddie and Benoit were jacked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Benoit was definitely jacked, yeah, for sure.
Yep.
There's a few of them who are like that. I mean, you even look at the wrestlers nowadays. I mean, they're seriously jacked. Either they are eating very well, but I know a lot of wrestlers eat very well.
Mm-hmm.
And so obviously it helps with their training and stuff like that. But look at someone like Randy Orton, who's been around for about 20 years now. He's always had that sort of physique about him. You know, athletic, muscular, so to speak, and he's always been related to drugs and stuff like that. So it's just been around, man. It's just always been around this shit.
Yeah. The sequel to this could easily be the WWE wellness policy, because that's a dark side in and of itself.
I'm quite surprised they didn't bring up the fact that Vince McMahon brought in Jerry Jarrett to run the company should he go to jail.
Yeah. The implications of what would have happened to the WWF after the fact.
There's a what if right there.
And there's the infamous story where, drugs and steroid use was all over professional wrestling. It wasn't just restricted to the WWF.
Oh, it wasn't just pro wrestling. It was everywhere.
Yeah, Jerry Jarrett allegedly told his locker room before he was going to the WWF, says, guys, just so you know, I'm going up to the WWF. Some of you guys may get an opportunity to work up there, so just need to make sure that you're off any of that shit that you might be on in order to pass a test. Dutch Mantel stood up and says, God damn, Jerry, the way you're paying us, we're not even on food.
Damn. All right, then. Shit, tell him how you really feel.
I love Dutch Mantel. I love that guy. I love him so much, man. He's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That promo he gave to fucking Glenn Beck that time, with him and Jack Swagger. Oh, man. It's like, yeah, that was just great. Yeah. So,
and then Jack Swagger goes and gets busted for weed.
Yeah. I like Jake Hager, by the way. He gave an interview when he was doing MMA fighting, which he was pretty good at, by the way.
He's still undefeated.
Yeah. You saw him being himself and no gimmick. I thought, yeah, he's really likable.
Yeah, when you let him talk.
I mean, he's more likable being himself than he is being this fucking gimmick. You know what I mean? And even then, I think he portrayed the gimmick pretty well, but that's a whole other story, by the way. So so it's over. Dark Side of the Ring is over.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Now we can go into speculation about season 4.
Well, I always wanted a Hulk Hogan Dark Side of the Ring.
Oh yeah, dude, and that one has to be at least 2 parts. At least,
maybe 3.
Yeah, maybe 3.
We're talking about the stuff like including more later on in his life, like after he hung up his boots, like when his son got his that
guy,
and he ended up paralyzing his friend, and some of the stuff fucking Hulk Hogan went on about was ridiculous, and then it's so crazy. The life he's led. I mean, he actually said, "Oh, God intended it," or some shit like that.
Yep.
It's just a get out clause, man. You know what I mean?
Well, that was what Vince Russo said about Owen Hart. It was God's will that Owen was going to die that night.
Oh my God!
Yeah, so
that was an interview he did for Wade Keller at the Pro Wrestling
Oh
Watch.
Lord.
so many. You think Viscera deserves a Dark Side of the Ring episode?
Viscera? I don't really know. Nah.
Scott Hall.
Scott, yeah, you could do one on him. But they've done kind of if you watch like they've done their kind of shit like on Scott Hall with the WWE DVDs. But there is stuff that they probably haven't covered.
Let me just send Bandit to you. You want to watch this, Bandit? Let me 1 second, man. I'll send it to anyone else you can think of, fellas. Or any scenario situation.
I would
think
say
maybe
the Ring Boy scandal.
Crown Jewel.
The Ring Boy scandal probably should be a Dark Side episode.
Crown Jewel could be one, but WWE would be all over Vice if they did that shit.
No, but the Crown Jewel episode where the wrestlers got stuck,
got
in
stranded.
Saudi Arabia.
Yeah,
that would be awesome.
Yeah. Let's see. What could they fucking do? I would say Eddie, but you already kind of covered Eddie with the Benoit.
Well, we covered Eddie with Benoit, so yeah. And so many wrestlers have fucking died, man.
Ian Rotten would be a good one.
Lex Luger would be a good one just because the rise and fall of Lex Luger would be good.
Yeah, Lex Luger would be very good.
Just to see
Scott Steiner.
Scott Steiner. Dude, Scott Steiner, leave him alone. We don't do Scott Steiner slander because of his math promos. You take my 66 2/3% chance of winning.
What about Triple H? Like, in the sense that, like, he's a guy who, Daily Motion's not a virus, dude.
Yeah, Daily Motion is safe. You're good. You can use that shit.
Is like a shittier YouTube.
Yeah.
But
better quality, though. At least with what these guys upload.
Yeah. I watched. Yeah. So
I'm trying to think of some good topics for a future Dark Side episode. Again, Ian Rotten would be a good one. The Ring Boy scandal would definitely be up there. Speaking Out would probably be another one.
Yeah, Speaking Out would be more modern times. I'd like to see him cover more modern shit over the last decade.
How about the
CM Punk's
WCW?
departure would be a good one.
Yeah.
The WCW, the company, like we have FMW, we have XPW. What about WCW itself? I mean,
they could do it, but they've kind of beaten that horse already.
Well, there's a number of topics actually they could.
But concerning within WCW, oh yeah, they could do when the Cat and Sonny Ono sued WCW
for racial discrimination.
Yep, because they did get sued. Yeah, Jeff Hardy would be. Once he gets out of his contract, I think they could do that.
I think the Hardys would come with Jeff Hardy.
A Dark Side episode.
Oh yeah, both the Hardys would. Because I remember
the Lita and Edge thing for sure would play a part. So
I mean, the Death of Mr. Perfect would probably be another one.
That one I would probably only watch once because Mr. Perfect. That one would be a sad one. Let's see.
Marty Jannetty.
Still being written. Same thing with Sonny. I would say do those in the future. But yeah, Marty and Sonny would be good.
Virgil. Perry Saturn.
Yeah, Perry Saturn would be one to talk about.
I heard he's homeless and shit.
Yeah. He was.
Yeah.
And Jericho helped him out. God, what could you do?
That.
And they've done angles. They've done like the worst ideas. They could do.
What about Kurt Angle and the situation with Jeff Jarrett, his wife ending up with Jeff Jarrett, all of that shit. And him being a junkie. We're talking about Olympic gold medalist turning into a fucking junkie.
Yeah.
Because he was
see how fucking big his neck is now. His neck looks like about to fucking explode.
Yeah, because that was why he quit the WWF in 2006 because he refused to go to rehab.
Yep.
And that was he was loaded on goddamn painkillers.
Yeah.
God, who else could you do?
It's really hard for me to think of guys outside of the WWE. It's really difficult because my knowledge of wrestlers outside WWE is very limited.
Hell, you could cover the Attitude Era almost entirely, like on a dark side of the ring.
Brian Christopher.
Oh yeah, Brian. Yep.
You've not only got his time in Memphis, but you've also got the scandals he was involved with when he was part of the WWF, his unceremonious firing, and his unfortunate suicide.
Yeah, Brian.
I'm sure there's some stories within ECW.
Oh yeah, ECW's got some.
Yeah, for sure. But
Mass Transit, I don't know if they've done that one yet, but Mass Transit could be.
They covered that in the life and crimes of New Jack.
New Jack, okay.
But I'm definitely when it comes to an episode, which is like Collision in Korea, which is like playing right from hell. Then for me, I can only think of the Crown Jewel saga when they were stuck in.
Yeah, Crown Jewel would be one I'd like to see.
I really would love to know, because there's wrestlers around who could easily testify about that. I would love to know what it was like knowing that Vince McMahon fucked off and left. And that's what it really upsets me regarding Vince McMahon. When it comes to being a leader of his men, he really can be quite cowardly. Like, he's on the plane from the plane ride for hell. I've said before, one peep of his head through the curtain, and everyone would fucking get their shit into gear and straighten up a little bit. But no, he didn't. He kept making Jim Ross fucking do his dirty work for him. He goes to fucking Saudi Arabia, for fuck's sake, takes majority of his roster there, and just leaves them there.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, it's ridiculous. And so I would love to know. I would love to know, like, how people thought of that. I remember the first one of the early times I was watching Crown Jewel. You got all these fucking sheiks sitting ringside on their sofas. You know what I mean? It just looks surreal. Usually you got fans there, but no, you got sheiks sitting there on the sofa smoking fucking shishas and hookah pipes and stuff like that. What the fuck is all that about? I mean, that's just not how I look at wrestling fans, But it'll be just interesting. I would love a dark side on that. I really would. It would be more recent as well. Whether they can get something like that out, anytime soon, I'm not so sure. I mean, how many wrestlers would be available today to talk about that who are not working for the WWE anymore?
Yeah, you got a few.
Brody Lee's gone, and he was very outspoken about it. You know what I mean?
They still are. Yep. They still are. Zayn never goes over there. Owens will never go over there. There's a few of them that are like, nah, we ain't doing that.
Once, but he won't be going there anytime soon.
No, Daniel Bryan went once too, and he is now going back.
Yep.
Yeah. So there's other people who don't mind, because I think they know that they get treated like royalty out there.
Actually, shit. Instead of doing just the Crown Jewel, you could do WWE's entire relationship with Saudi Arabia as a dark side of the ring. That would be what you would do. You would just take the hour and just be like, this is how it came about, blah, 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 blah. Yeah.
One that I think would be interesting for a dark side purely for historical reasons, Black Saturday.
Oh, yeah. When Vince showed up on a WCW.
Yeah.
And he bought out the shit and put in All-American Wrestling and shit.
Yes. Vince McMahon bought out
Georgia
Championship Wrestling. He bought out their time slot and got the WWF programming on Turner Network Television.
You greedy fuck. Yeah, I sold what was to become WCW to Ted Turner and blah, 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 and I didn't think they'd use it against me. Well, what the fuck did you think was going to happen?
I'm sure there's some stories.
Fans were livid at the time. I mean,
they were pissed. Yeah.
I'm sure there's stories with people like Honky Tonk Man, Raven, Gangrel. I know Gangrel was mentioned obviously in the Luna Vachon episode, but I really do feel there's more there than meets the eye. Sabu as well. I'm sure he's got some.
Oh yeah, Sabu, Sandman. There's a lot you could do for
an entire episode on the Sheik.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
crazy shit that he did.
Exactly. So, and obviously, the thing with Darkseid is that many episodes about stuff I had no idea even existed until they brought it to my attention.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know anything about XPW. I knew nothing about FMW. I knew nothing about Grizzly Smith. Or that other guy, that biker guy. I knew nothing about him. Bruiser Brody. Yeah, was it? Yeah, nothing. I knew nothing about these guys. Then they brought to my attention, and I was absolutely fascinated. And so many of them have a link. It's amazing how there's, even if it's really minuscule, there's always a link back to the WWE in some capacity. It's crazy.
And the thing is, with all that, there's going to be secrets that will go to the grave. That's all that needs to be said. Yep. There will be things that even we will never know about.
Exactly. So, but yeah, season 4, I really look forward to it. Next week, I'm happy to talk about, or maybe tomorrow. I mean, we'll see if we can fit it in regarding scheduling, guys. But we should definitely talk about this whole season as a whole. Give our thoughts and maybe ratings and reviews and all of that.
And also, real quick, shout out to the Ring of Honor crew. Tough times, y'all.
Yeah, I heard they all got sacked.
Yep.
They're basically being released at the end of the year. So what's happening is if everybody is being released from their contract come the end of their final battle pay-per-view in December.
Because I know Bobby wanted us to touch on this. I know he probably wanted to be here, and we could still do that. But yeah, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to the Ring of Honor crew. And
that's it. Is that the end of Ring of Honor?
No, apparently Sinclair is going to reboot it in April.
They're going to reboot it.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah. We'll see if that happens.
Let's just hope it doesn't turn out like WWE ECW. That's all we ask.
Well, Tony Khan and Billy Corgan must be rubbing their hands right now at the potential talent they could pick up for both AEW and the NWA.
Vince is looking at that tape library like, oh yeah, let's get this.
Yeah.
I think it would, like, regarding picking up all this talent, eventually, can they be used? Would they have to make extra shows in order to accommodate all this talent? Because you can only get so much talent and be able to use them. If you can't accommodate them, then what's the point?
Well, with AEW, I think they would have to trim a significant portion of the roster, which I suspect is probably what is going to happen fairly soon.
And we've been saying that. I think it's going to happen around tax time here in America because that's when they usually do cuts for WWE and for AEW. I could see it kind of being the same thing. They'll probably start trimming the fat, which they need to do. You can't keep everybody forever.
No.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, people like Matt Hardy, for instance, maybe. I mean, like, get some younger guys in. He's in his mid-40s now.
Yeah, I'm thinking more probably somebody like a Joey Janela, a Sonny Kiss. I can see them being cut. I mean, the guys who couldn't draw you money if you gave them green crayons.
Very good, very well said. All right, then. Well,
you wanted to give a shout out to Stephanie McMahon.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah. Before we go, presenting the Dumb Bitch Award, and that award goes to Stephanie McMahon Helmsley. For several years ago, the people tried to take down my father, and now we are going to take down these terrorists that attacked the United States of America. You stupid bitch! You just blamed the federal government for trying to take your father down, and now you also said that you and all these others are hoping that the federal government takes down all these terrorists that attacked us.
Oh, no, it's just how tasteless can you get the first show back after the September 11th attacks, and you compare the September 11th attacks on the World Trade Center to the
steroid trial. Yeah, like, you stupid bitch.
Yeah,
I noticed WWE made sure to omit that completely from all of the repeats of that episode of SmackDown.
And here's the thing, like, okay, I know the episode itself is live, but the pre-tapes that they do usually for tributes, they tape those.
Yeah.
They don't air those motherfuckers live. What were they thinking airing this? Like, you couldn't think to go through post and say, maybe we shouldn't air this? Like, what were you thinking? Oh, my God. Stephanie McMahon, you stupid bitch. I think that's a good way to close out season 3. And fuck Ric Flair. And Tommy Dreamer.
Yeah, fuck them all. Okay, so keep an eye out on the tube for a recap of the entire season of season 3. We have a lot to talk about, lots of episodes, 14 in all, a year's worth of episodes as well, because we had the first half at the beginning of this year and the second half of the season later on this year. I hate it when they do shit like that. I don't know why they do shit like that. It almost feels like another season.
I do. They always leave you wanting more. It's a smart tactic, honestly.
No, fair enough. But nevertheless, we are going to talk about that as well as other things here on the tube. We talk about everything and anything when it comes to sports, when it comes to films, video games, television shows. We are on it. Check out all our trailer reactions. Check out all our reviews. There's something there for anybody and everybody. So, Jose, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Shredders, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'll see all you guys later. Take care. Bye-bye.
Good night.